If you play the saxophone and you are interested in improvisation, you have probably heard the word licks. Maybe you already practiced them. Maybe you are confused by them. Or maybe you are not even sure what the word really means. In this video, I want to talk about licks, what they actually are, why they are so popular in saxophone learning, and why copying licks alone does not teach you how to truly improve. This is not an attack on licks. It is an invitation to understand their role and their limits. What is a lick in saxophone music? Let's start very simple. A lick is a short musical phrase, usually a few notes long. It's often taken from solo played by another musician. Jazz solos, blues solos, funk lines, pop fills. When people say learn your licks, they mean memorize short phrases that already sound good and reuse them in your own playing. Licks are like musical sentences that someone else has already written. You repeat them, transpose them, move them to different keys. This is extremely common in saxophone education. And there is a reason for that. Why licks feel so attractive to saxophone players? Licks feel attractive because they work immediately. You play a lick and it sounds musical. It sounds right. It sounds confident. This gives a sense of progress. Especially early on, licks can feel like a shortcut into improvisation. They reduce uncertainty, they reduce fear of wrong notes, they offer safety. This is why so many saxophone players gravitate toward licks. They provide quick wins, and quick wins are emotionally reassuring. Why licks are not bad? It's important to be clear. Licks are not bad. They are part of the musical tradition. Musicians have always learned by listening, imitating, and absorbing language. Jazz history is full of this. So the problem is not the existence of licks. The problem is how they are used and what people expect them to do. When licks are treated as language, they can be helpful. When they are treated as identity, they become limiting. The big misunderstanding about improvisation. Many saxophone players believe improvisation means choosing the right lick at the right moment. This turns improvisation into a storage problem. How many licks do I know? Which licks fit this chord? Which lick should I play now? This approach creates mental overload. Improvisation becomes a retrieval task, not a creative act. Music slows down, tension increases, the player sounds busy but not present. This is where many saxophone players start feeling stuck, even though they know many licks. Why copying does not equal understanding? When you copy a lick, you copy the surface, the notes, the rhythm, the shape, but you do not automatically copy the reason behind it. Why that phrase worked? What tension it created? What it resolved? What came before it? What came after it? Without understanding this relationship, licks remain isolated objects. They don't connect naturally to the music around them. So players jump from one memorized idea to other. The result often sounds fragmented. Not because the player lacks ability, but because the material lacks integration. Why licks can delay musical identity? One of the biggest hidden causes of over-relying on licks is identity confusion. When you always play other people's phrase, you rarely ask, what do I want to say? Improvisation becomes a collage of borrowed voices. They can sound impressive, but it often feels empty. Many saxophone players reach a point where they say, I sound like everyone else. This is not a technical problem, it is a creative one. Identity does not emerge from copying alone. It emerges from making choices, taking risks, and responding to sound in real time. Why leaks create dependency? Other issue with leaks is dependency. Players feel safe only when they remember a leak. When memory fails, panic appears. Improvisation collapses. This creates a fragile relationship with music. Real improvisation does not depend on recall alone. It depends on listening, timing, and intention. When players move beyond leaks, they feel free, even with less material. Why many players think they are improvising, but aren't? This is a sensitive point. Many saxophone players believe they are improving when they are actually recombining memorized material. There is nothing wrong with that stage, but it's a stage. True improvisation involves responding to the moment, to harmony, to rhythm, to other musicians, to silence. Leaks can be part of the vocabulary, but they cannot be the whole conversation. In the next part, we will look at why leaks feel useful at first but become limiting later, how improvisation actually develops beyond limitation, and how players move from copying language to creating their own. This shift is where real freedom began. Why leaks feel useful at first and why they eventually stop working. Why leaks often create a false sense of progress. One of the reasons leaks are so appealing is that they create an immediate feeling of improvement. You learn a short phrase, you play it in time, it sounds musical. This creates confidence. You feel like something has clicked, but this kind of progress is very specific. It is progress in reproduction, not in creation. Reproducing a phrase and creating a phrase use very different skills. Reproduction depends on memory. Creation depends on perception. Early on, these two feel similar. Later, the difference becomes obvious. This is where many saxophone players start feeling stuck. They know many things, but they don't feel free. Why leaks stop working as music gets more complex? At a basic level, leaks can fit easily. Simple harmony, clear grooves, predictable forms. But as music becomes richer, context changes faster. Harmony move, rhythms shift, interaction increase. Pre-packaged phrase stop fitting naturally. Players then face a problem. Either force the leak or stop playing. Neither option feels musical. This is where improvisation starts feeling stressful. Not because the player lacks ability, but because the approach is no longer appropriate. Why leaks don't teach listening? One of the most important skills in improvisation is listening. Listening to harmony, listening to rhythm, listening to space, listening to other musicians. Leaks do not train listening. They train recall. A player can execute a link perfectly while barely listening. This creates a disconnect. Improvisation becomes something applied on top of music, not something born from it. Real improvisation emerges from listening first. Sound responds to sound. This cannot be replaced by memorization. Why too many leaks create hesitation? Another unintended effect of learning many leaks is hesitation. When options multiply, decisions slow down. Player hesitates thinking, which leak should I use now? Improvisation loses flow. Timing becomes rigid, confidence disappears. This is not because the player is unprepared, this is because the brain is overloaded with choices. Simpler frameworks support faster decision. Freedom comes from clarity, not quantity. Why licks don't create connection? Music is communication, improvisation is conversation. When players rely heavily on licks, they often speak without listening. They deliver rehearsed lines instead of responding. This can sound impressive, but it rarely feels connected. Connection requires responsiveness, presence, risk. Licks reduce risk. And while that feels safe, it also reduces vitality. Why many players confuse fluency with freedom? A player can be fluent with licks and still feel trapped. They play quickly, they play accurately, but they don't feel expressive. This is because fluency is not the same as freedom. Freedom comes from being able to respond to what is happening now, not from repeating what worked before. This is a crucial distinction. Why licks should be a stage, not a destination. Licks can be useful as a temporary phase. They introduce language, they show how phrasing works, they reveal stylistic features, but they must be transcended. If a player stays at the level of copying, growth slows. Improvisation demands internalization, meaning, not repetition. Why real improvisation feels more uncertain? When players move beyond licks, improvisation feels less predictable. This can feel uncomfortable at first. When players move beyond licks, improvisation feels less predictable. This can feel uncomfortable at first. There is more silence, more space, more risk, but this uncertainty is where creativity lives. It means you are responding instead of recalling. Many players retreat back to licks at this point, not because licks are better, but because uncertainty feels unsafe. A good learning environment helps players stay here. Why moving beyond licks requires time? Moving beyond licks cannot be rushed. It requires repeated exposure to uncertainty. It requires patience. And it requires trust in listening. This is why short-term learning often keeps players stuck in imitation, and the long-term learning creates musician. In the next part, we will explore what actually replaces licks in real improvisation, how musicians began to create instead of repeating, and how identity starts to form when copying is no longer the main strategy. The moment copying stops feeling satisfying. At some point, many saxophone players notice a shift. Licks still work, but they stop feeling satisfying. They sound correct, but not meaningful. This moment is important. It is often misunderstood as boredom or lack of progress. In reality, it is a sign of something deeper is trying to emerge. The player is no longer satisfied with repeating ideas. They want to say something. This desire marks the beginning of real improvisation. From phrase to intention. When licks fall away, something else takes their place. Intention. Instead of asking, what lick should I play? The question becomes, what do I want to express right now? This is a profound change. Improvisation shifts from execution to communication. The saxophone becomes a voice, not a storage device. Notes are chosen for their effect, not because they were memorized. This does not mean playing randomly. It means playing purposefully. Why listening becomes the primary skill. When licks are no longer the center, listening moves to the front. Listening to harmony, listening to rhythm, listening to space, listening to silence. Improvisation becomes responsive. You play because you hear something, not because you remembered something. This is where timing improves naturally. Phrasing becomes conversational. The music breathes. This cannot happen when attention is trapped in memory. Why simpler material feels more expressive? A surprising thing happens when players move beyond licks. They often use less material, fewer notes, more space, more repetition with variation. This feels more expressive, not less, because expression comes from timing and intention, not quantity. This is why many great improvisers sound clear even with simple ideas. They are not trying to impress, they are trying to connect. Why theory finally starts making sense here? This is also the stage where theory begins to feel useful. Not as instruction, but as explanation. You hear tension. Theory helps you name it. You feel resolution. Theory confirms it. Theory stops interrupting improvisation. It lives in the background. This is the healthy relationship between theory and improvisation. Why many players feel exposed at this stage? Moving beyond licks can feel exposing. There is less to hide behind, less safety, more silence. This can trigger self-doubt. Players wonder, is this too simple? Do I sound empty? This vulnerability is part of the process. It means the music is becoming personal. Personal expression always feels riskier than imitation. Why identity emerges through choices? Identity does not come from copying, it comes from choice. Choosing when to play, choosing when not to play, choosing tone, choosing space. Every choice shapes voice. When licks dominate, choices are pre-made. When intention leads, identity forms naturally. This is why players who move beyond licks start sounding recognizable. Not because they are copying less, but because they are choosing more. Why this stage feels slow but is not? This stage can feel slower because there are few automatic patterns, because decisions are conscious, because silence appears. But this slowness is deceptive. Deep integration is happening. The foundation is being rebuilt. Speed and fluency return later with stability. This is why short-term learning often fails here, and long-term learning supports growth. Why real improvisation feels different internally? Players often describe this stage as calmer, less frantic, less pressured, even when the music is intense. This internal calm is a sign of alignment. The mind, ear, and body are no longer fighting each other. This is not accidental. It is the result of moving beyond memorization into presence. In the final part, we will bring everything together and clarify how licks can be integrated healthily without becoming a crutch, and how improvisation matters when copying, listening, theory, and identity are finally in balance. Licks are not the problem, confusion is. At this point, it's important to be precise. Licks are not the enemy. Confusion about their role is. When licks are misunderstood, they become a substitute for thinking, listening, and feeling. But when their role is clear, they can exist without taking over. The problem is not copying. The problem is never moving beyond copying. Improvisation is not built by eliminating leaks, but by observing them and letting them dissolve. The healthy role of leaks in musical language. In a health learning process, leaks serve a very specific purpose. They expose you to phrasing, rhythmic placement, articulation, stylistic nuance. They show how something can sound, not what you must play. In this sense, leaks are examples, not formulas. They expand your listening, but they should never replace it. When a leak is internalized properly, it stops being recognizable as a leak. It becomes part of your vocabulary and eventually part of your intuition. Why real listening happens after copying? Copying is not the end of learning, it is the beginning. The real learning happens after copying, when you stop reproducing and start adapting. This is the moment where many players get stuck. They copy well, but they don't transform. Transformation requires time, distance, reflection, and repetition in varied contexts. Without these elements, leaks remain external objects. With them, they dissolve into personal expression. Why identity cannot be copied? You cannot copy identity. You can copy material, but not perspective, not timing, not intention, not history. Every player brings a unique combination of listening habits, cultural background, emotional memory, life experience. This is why even when two players use the same material, they sound different. Identity emerges when you stop trying to sound like someone else and start trusting your own responses. Leaks can support this only if they are observed, not displayed. Why many players stay trapped in the leak phase? The leak phase is comfortable. It offers structure, predictability, approval. Players receive validation because what they play sounds familiar, but comfort can become a cage. When players stay too long in imitation, they stop developing sensitivity. They stop taking risks. They stop listening deeply. Breaking out of this phase requires courage and a learning environment that supports uncertainty. How real improvisation matures over time. Improvisation matures slowly, not because it is difficult, but because it's personal. As time passes, players rely less on memory and more on perception. They trust silence. They repeat ideas with intention. They respond to the moment. This maturity cannot be rushed. Short-term learning often keeps players at the surface. Long-term learning allows identity to settle. This is where music stops feeling performative and starts feeling honest. Why theory, leaks, and listening must coexist? Improvisation is not a choice between theory, leaks, or listening. This is the balance between them. Theory provides orientation. Leaks provide language. Listening provides direction. When one dominates, the system collapses. When they are balanced, improvisation flows. The key is hierarchy. Listening leads, theory supports, leaks decorate. This order changes everything. Why simplicity is a sign of maturity? As improvisation matures, playing often becomes simpler. Not because the player knows less, but because they know what matters. They choose fewer notes with greater intentions. They leave space. They allow ideas to breathe. This simplicity is often misunderstood as limitation. In reality, it is clarity. Clarity is the opposite of confusion, and confusion is what most players are trying to escape. Why this process requires patience? Move beyond licks is not a switch, it is a gradual shift. There will be moments of debate, moments of silence, moments where things feel exposed. These moments are not setbacks, they are invitations to listen more deeply. A patient learning environment makes this possible. Without patience, players retreat to safety and the growth stops. The real question behind leaks. Ultimately, leaks are not really the issue. The real question is, do I trust myself to respond to sound? If the answer is no, leaks become a shield. If the answer is yes, leaks become option. Improvisation begins when trust replaces control. Copying leaks can open the door to improvisation, but staying there keeps the door half closed. Real improvisation emerges when copying gives way to listening, intention, and choice. Leaks dissolve into language. Theory supports perception. Identity forms naturally. This is not a shortcut, it is a journey. One that rewards patience, attention, and trust. If this reflection resonates and you would like to explore this journey more deeply, I wrote a free book about my own path through music and improvisation. You can download it at marcelocuco.com/ebook or link here on the description of this video. No obligation, just something to accompany you as your relationship with improvisation continues to evolve. Thank you for staying with this conversation. See you in another video. Don't forget to follow the page and share with someone that would love to listen the message of this content. See you!